cancer researcher to building the infrastructure for the next generation of biomaterials development. And I would like to start by sharing my personal story and my background and how this led to me founding this company, Geltech Labs. So I grew up between London in the UK and Istanbul, Turkey. I immigrated to the US when I was 18 years old. And unfortunately, when I was 17, my mother was diagnosed with cancer. But more than her cancer diagnosis, her fight with chemotherapy was very impactful for me. I saw how only 1% of the medication was actually reaching the tumor, and the remaining 99% was attacking her healthy cells. And this statistic was shocking for me. And I found that this same problem was shared amongst many other people. In fact, most people have loved ones who are fighting chemotherapy or are taking other drugs that are attacking their healthy cells in their body when they should be targeting specific sites. So I started working in laboratories using biomaterials which enable smarter treatments for healthcare. So what are biomaterials? In pharma, of course, they are used in all forms of injectables, pills, and patches. MedTech products, they're used in wound care, implants, hygiene products, and of course, in research laboratories, we use biomaterials to grow cells, to do tissue engineering, bioprinting, develop all these synthetic or bioprinted organs in the lab. So they really form a foundation for both research and modern healthcare as we see it today. Unfortunately, while these materials have advanced significantly, the actual research processes haven't changed since the 90s. There's around $25 billion spent every year on soft biomaterial R&D. It's around 100,000 laboratories, and they still rely on manual trial and error protocols. And as a scientist myself, I can tell you I spent many years repeating the same manual protocols every single day. We create hundreds of batches of materials. We test them one at a time in the hopes that we can get 4 or 5 formulations out of this. I worked at labs in enterprise companies in Europe called Acıbadem, at Harvard Medical School, as well as here in California at UC San Diego. And I found that while other industries like genetics, drug discovery, synthetic biologies had these huge hyper-automated robotic systems that generated huge amounts of data, they could then feed into AI and machine learning models to build simulations and thus cut the time it takes to get to the formulation I'm looking for exponentially quickly. This biomaterials industry that I was working for had none of these tools. And there's zero end-to-end automation platforms that enabled scientists like myself to develop these types of materials. So after repeating the same tests every single day and feeling like a robot, I dropped out of the PhD program in bioengineering at UC San Diego to start this company, Geltech Labs. At Geltech Labs, we are building the cloud lab for biomaterials R&D, enabling our customers to work 10 times cheaper with 7 times more data and 5 times higher precision. And really at the core of what we're doing is this robotic technology, the hardware, the automated microfluidic and robotic systems that enable us to generate the high throughput data needed to build AI and machine learning models that we can then use to simulate formulations before they ever occur, and then actually do the physical lab work with high throughput and high precision using our proprietary robotics technologies. And we are building this cloud lab loop where scientists can log on via software, simulate their experiments, issue experiments directly in formulations, and then characterize them using our hardware as well. And we're trying to provide an ultra convenient service where scientists could even log on and track what their experiments are doing 24/7 via their phone if they want to. And this same type of business model has been done in other industries like drug discovery, synthetic biology, and genetics. And we are bringing this same business model that's been emerging, this cloud lab or self-driving lab business model, into biomaterials. We have 4 active paid pilots that are using our platform currently, and we are working towards a business model that's a tiered subscription system where customers earn credits that they can then spend on simulations or on physical formulations and characterizations. Our company originally started, and I believe when I first pitched to you, we pitched as a robotics and hardware sales company. Since then, we have pivoted our business model to keeping robotics and hardware at the core of what we're doing and leveraging these as data engines. But we also still plan to sell robotics kits and hardwares to select laboratories at a higher price point than we had previously intended. You may be asking, how large is the opportunity for this market? Well, the biomaterials industry broadly is at $300 billion. We don't work with any metallic or ceramics-based biomaterials. We're focused on natural and polymeric biomaterials, the softer segment, the ones that are essentially in between liquids and solids. So it's a $120 billion market opportunity. And specifically for R&D, there's about $25 billion spending. And our revenue target in 2031 is $50 million. You can see here the amount of publications in this space has never been larger. So there's more data than there ever has been in this industry as well. And especially with the advances in AI and machine learning, huge opportunity to create this type of cloud lab product and serve that to the biomaterials industry. And we are going to be the company that is accomplishing it. And the industry itself is primarily driven by an aging population, so a larger need for regenerative medicine, advanced therapies, and advanced chronic wound care products, pharmaceutical formulations, and also the advances in smart material advances is leading to more and more R&D growth in this industry. And we plan to capitalize this by enabling our customers to develop products faster and smarter and more efficient. About a year ago, it was just me as a grad student leading a team. I'm thankful to be joined by some very experienced, great team members. I'm joined by Sung Kwan, our CTO, who had his previous company. He went from founding, scaling, and selling hundreds of biomedical devices a year. And Amin, our chief AI officer, has 30 years of experience working with AI companies and developing software and machine learning products. And Lou and Taylor are our recent commercial hires. Taylor's first day was actually this week on Monday, and Lou will be starting on August 1st. So they're expanding upon the founder-led sales that I have essentially launched. We have a tremendous advisory board. On the left are our board members, Sammy and Greg, and I have a specific focus on picking board members that have large exits so that I can follow in their footsteps and we can set up marketing strategies that will eventually become attractive to large acquirers. Greg has 12 exits under his belt from companies he's founded, with one of them being close to $1 billion. Jamie Rogers is leading generative AI product development at Google, and he is now advising and supporting our AI and machine learning and data intelligence pipeline. So I'm very fortunate to have a great group of advisors that are supporting the generation or the progression of my company. In terms of traction, we've been able to get $1 million in LOIs and $300,000 in paid pilots. These paid pilots are very recent. They've happened within the past 3 months. So we are working to convert these into revenue by the end of the year. And our largest pilot is with Merck on their injectable PLGA product. And then we also working with Stanford, Blue Cell, and BioLink. We've raised $2.5 million on our pre-seed round. This is including 3 venture capital companies and close to $600,000 in support from UC San Diego and the National Science Foundation. We also have 3 patents filed, which cover our robotic automation systems, nanofiltration methods for handling gel samples. As I mentioned, these materials aren't quite liquids, they aren't quite solid. So all the traditional liquid handlers and lab automation tools just aren't applicable to this industry. So our core IP is the ability to automatically handle gels and similar soft biomaterial products. And leveraging that core IP, being able to build out a variety of systems and nanofiltration methods that enable this cloud lab I'm mentioning. We also broadly covered some machine learning and AI algorithms that are used in the development of our cloud lab as well. This sales funnel was built entirely by myself. as a founder. And now with these two commercial hires, we'll be expanding on this. You can see the names that are in the pilot LOI stage and also the recent paid pilots that we have started, all of which are in startups that have raised between $2 and $100 million. In terms of projections, we are projecting a $500,000 in revenue this year. We are still raising an oversubscribed pre-seed round. And in comparing ourselves to other companies that combine software, hardware, and a service, and sometimes hybrid service and hardware-based business model, we can see incredibly large revenue multiples due to the recurring revenue and the data layer that is a part of their business model. So with an exit valuation at 20x multiple on revenue, leave that in the $25 million to $50 million range, we can get a $500 million to $1 billion exit, which is essentially the long-term plan for the company. Currently, we are seeking a total of $3 million, of which $2.5 million is closed, which includes grant funding as well. This will mostly be used towards continuing our AI and robotics development, but also expanding into commercial and getting some quality certifications that we need to start serving large pharma and enterprise companies. This will get us to $2.5 million in recurring revenue in 2027, 5,000 automated experiments, and over 10 million simulated experiments. DCA, I thank you very much for listening. My journey initially started to help just one patient, but now we're working to help 100,000 biomaterials labs develop better materials for our loved ones. Thank you very much for listening.
This is really great, Sana. What's your valuation cap?
So most recently, we're raising at 10 million post, but we do have an offer for 300,000 at a 15 million post valuation.
Got it.
And from the feedback I received, I understand there was some concern about the valuation, but depending on the size of the investment and who is specifically investing, I would be open to talking and seeing what we can work out.
Right. The market is speaking though. If you're still raising money, if you get from 2.5 million out of 3 million, the market clearing price is at least 10 million. Just bring us into the customer. What is the economic benefit to Merck of having this tool? Does it save them 6 months on a development plan? Does it save them, $1 billion in materials? What's the practical effect of your tool?
Merck runs about 80 samples per week at one of their laboratories, and they have 3 laboratories working on this one injectable project. So it's 240 samples per week. And it takes up about 5 PhD scientists. Basically half of their week goes towards running these assays. So we would be completely automating that, saving essentially 100 hours a week for PhD level scientists.
Got it. Which also advances the speed of the project, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a lot more that could be said about when we start incorporating our software and AI into this as to how much it could advance, but it's a measurable outcome. Our robotic system can save them about 100 hours a week. Right.
And maybe some discoveries would never occur to them if they didn't have your ability to advance the projects. Okay.
Yeah.
That's something to have a slide on that and have a competitor slide, because if I think of you as like the Illumina for, microfluidic, materials design, I want to know, will the customers pull you or are you going to be pushing them? And it sounds like you started with the latter, but you want to move to the former.
Yeah. I mean, trying to sell hardware was very much a push.
Yes.
Right? But when we sell a service and, we can very easily adapt to their process, and it's as simple as them shipping samples to us or giving us orders for how to make their samples, the business model got a lot easier. And it completely happened organically. We were asking companies to send us samples for free. We got so many samples, we started charging for it, and it kind of led to this cloud lab-based business model.
I love to hear that. That's your customers will make more customers for you.
Yeah.
That's a great model. Vipul and then Jen.
So one of the things that I think is missing in your pitch is clear articulation of what the benefits are and quantification of what the benefits are to your customers. You talked about it being cheaper, 24/7 access, and more data. All of those things are good, but at the end of the day, I want to know if I'm a customer, and if these are the metrics I have today, how will these metrics change with your solution? That's something that is good for me to understand, and this group to understand also your customer.
Yeah, no, I think that's great feedback, and I have been exploring new ways to communicate this. I'm thinking of, instead of taking a year and testing 1,000 different formulations with us, they could do it in 2 months while testing, 10 formulations, because we've simulated a lot of what's not going to work. And yeah, I'll work on improving that in my slides.
That's the data that would be good to articulate.
Jeff, and then also.
Two questions. One, as a layperson not in this field, I really don't know what you guys do. So, I mean, it sounds like you're taking something that's in between a liquid and a solid, and then you're applying something to it and then running tests against it. Can you just tell me what is it that there's 80 formulations of what are they trying to create? What is it that they're doing with this base material? What are they adding to it? And I think the robotics part of it.
Yeah. So essentially, the materials we're working with are soft biomaterials. So think about things in the material class of like contact lenses, right?
Okay.
Wound care products, cosmetics, face masks, gels, liquids, right? So the first step is formulating them, which can be up to 100 different inputs that you're tuning to make that formulation. So
to make a semi-soft gelatinous material for whatever purpose you're doing. So you're taking X number of ingredients, mixing them together automatically, creating some sort of semi-solid that they're going to then use for some purpose.
Yeah, so that's the formulation. And then of course you need to characterize it. You need to say, okay, I made this formulation, but how does it actually behave? And right there,
you automate that too.
And we automate that as well. And then of course there's, currently the method is, you'll look at these kind of 10 different parameters that you have going in, and then you look at the different outputs coming out, and you'll repeat this for like 1,000 different samples, and you hope that one of them works.
So, and that would be my feedback, which is, unless you're in this field, I don't know that you would know any of that. So that's, I get now what kind of a complicated problem we're trying to solve. Second question is, excuse me, you showed a series A and a C graph. 5 million in your seed. What is that? Excuse me. What is that for? What are your plans for the 5 million and the 10, 15 million? Like, why do you need that? Is it to build more hardware so you can sell it? Or like, what is your reason for having a planned seed and series A round?
Yeah, so we want to continue building out our internal automated lab. That's the first part. Buying more hardware, buy more robotics, developing more of our proprietary hardware that's going to be used to fuel the system, continue software development, hire salespeople, continue IP development, all these different.
And you don't think that, I mean, it sounds like you're getting to a pretty high revenue stream. Like, what kind of gross margins are you having that you couldn't find out yourself? I mean, a 5 million injection is pretty substantial for a seed, and it doesn't sound like I need to get this done. Like some people say, I need $5 million to run a trial. Some people say, I need $5 million to build 1,000 units so that I can ramp my pipeline. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so we want to jump to, the 25 to $50 million revenue range as quickly as possible and secure a huge exit in a very venture capital type of mindset. So if we want to jump from 2.5 million to $15 million in revenue, that's exactly why we want a $5 million injection, so that we can do this as quickly as possible and get to an exit as quickly as possible.
Alton, so yeah.
Okay. What was confusing was your original statistics when you did the introduction. You talked about things getting to the cancer cells and only a small percentage is getting there. That's confusing as to what they eventually said about what your company does. Because yours is a simulation, but you still need to go to a trial to prove that it works. So do you have anything that proves that this process works, that the simulations are correct? Because because a cancer, let's say a cancer is this big, it has X amount of cells in it, but your body is this big, so it's always going to be a small percentage of cells that it's going to get to. So that's why it was confusing for you to say only 4% of the stuff is getting to the cancer cells, when you compare it against the whole body cells. So that didn't make sense to me about how that fit in to what you're doing.
Yeah, so essentially biomaterials enable you to target and localize drugs to certain regions of the body. So you can create a depot within a certain region by injecting it into that certain region and enabling targeted release.
So how is your program doing that to make it targeted to, let's say, the liver or to the the brain?
We basically accelerate the laboratories that are developing these types of technologies. So like Merck, for example, they're developing an injectable, right? That's meant for targeted drug release. So we are accelerating their efforts so that they can develop these materials faster.
But for a simulation to occur, you need to have previous data so that you can create a simulation, or because it's AI is always relying on previous data to be there for them to come up with something.
I gotta move on to Sylvia.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, if you can explain what's going on in your lab, what do you have in your lab, which kind of hardware, and then the use case, like does the customer, what do they do?
So the customers are developing biomedical products, soft biomaterials, and our customers are in the R&D stage. So they're either testing in vitro or in silico. They're either simulating or they're doing physical tests. And so that's essentially the process that we're automating.
So they're sending you the samples?
Either they're sending us their samples or we're making the samples for them and testing them in our lab.
And which kind of hardware do you have in your lab? Is your own hardware or?
Yeah, this is hardware we have developed ourselves, proprietary hardware, and we also have some off-the-shelf hardware as well.
And how much can you scale with the hardware you have right now?
With the hardware we have right now we have 3 of our own proprietary robotic units that process 12 samples a month. By the end of this year, we will have about 50 samples we can process a month. And then with more funding we get, we can continue to expand this, take on more customers, expand on that.
Yeah, following up on Alton's question, so you basically, you give this machine to a lab and they make a material. This material then, if they think it'll work against, they'll have to go through the FDA process and all that before they can sell it. So you're just making the basic material for them to figure out if it's gonna work.
Yeah, I mean, I think one clear way to look at it was we take the labs up to a 510K, if you guys are familiar with that. And then, any manufacturing, clinical trials, animal trials, we don't touch that part of the business. But we make sure they have the properties and the data they need to get to that 510K.
Your machine actually runs the experiment. It's not AI predicting if it'll make the material or not. It actually runs the experiment to see if you can make it.
Yes.
Okay.
So we combine that with our AI. So instead of running 100 experiments with our device, you can precisely run 5 or 10 that you have more certainty on.
Out of the 90 that you don't run, is there any chance that one of those could be a hit?
There is, but very low chance. And it's always a game of probability. But you're trying to cut out as much of what you believe is not going to work. Yeah.
Okay, Toby, last question. Yeah, real quick, are there any questions online?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so you'll be next, Toby, then you.
Just quickly, so what is the cost of building out these machines and what's the payback on that, through your customer relationships on recovering that?
So the cost to us to build one of our carousel units is currently around $12,000. The sales price is between 50 and 75K if they wanted to buy the hardware unit. And for example, just one of these contracts we have, for example, Apple Bio, they've been a reoccurring customer, and the first order they did was 12,000. And that was
I was referring more because it sounds like your primary model is not the sale of the hardware. That's where you pivoted away from. So like on the subscription model and the service model, at what point are you getting, how long does it take you to recover that cost?
the cost of the building the hardware.
Yeah.
So for example, with Apple Bio, their first order was, I believe, 11K. So, and that took us about a week of work to do, about 4 hours of labor cost. So we recovered that basically with one contract, one testing contract.
Along those lines, are you going to get repeating revenue for somebody who buys a $12,000 machine?
Yes, through consumables, kits, services, and maintenance.
I'm high.
The
Yes.
sales price is 12,000.
Couple of questions. Is your AI model learning from each successive experiment?
Yes.
In that case, how do you protect the customer from IP leaking? If they give you some parameters, how do you guarantee that one company's AI proprietary material does not leak to another company's proprietary material?
Yeah, great question. So there is a software standard called 21 CFR Part 11, and basically that enables all customer data to be protected with firewalls, and the software we're building is in compliance with that. And if the customer chooses to, they can opt into sharing their data with us, but they are not obliged to do so. And their data and their specific model gets smarter over time, but it won't necessarily leak into everything else. And our data is trained on literature and also our own proprietary data.
I see. Well, second question, for your polymers, what's the strongest